My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 31 years old, and I used to believe that working hard and staying loyal would earn me respect. I was wrong. This is the story of how my own father tried to erase me, and how one Christmas dinner changed everything. The smell of roasted turkey filled the dining room, but all I could taste was betrayal. My father stood at the head of the table, wine glass raised, his face glowing with that fake warmth he always wore for family gatherings. Aunt Linda smiled. Uncle Rob nodded. My younger brother Derek smirked from across the table like he already knew what was coming. Dad cleared his throat. "I have an announcement," he said, voice steady and cold. "Claire, effective immediately, I'm cutting you off. No more support. No inheritance. Derek will be taking over the family business, and frankly, he's earned it." The room went silent. My fork clattered against my plate. Aunt Linda gasped softly, but no one moved to defend me. I felt every eye on me, waiting for tears, waiting for me to crumble. Instead, I smiled. Slowly, I reached into my bag sitting beside my chair. My father's confident expression faltered for just a second. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice tight. I pulled out a single envelope and placed it gently on the table. "Just something I thought you might want to see," I said calmly. "Before you finish that speech." My father stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. His hand tightened around his wine glass. Derek leaned forward, confused. "What is that?" he demanded. His voice sharp with panic he tried to hide. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, let the tension build. Aunt Linda looked between us nervously. "Open it," I said softly, pushing the envelope toward my father. He didn't move. His jaw clenched. That's when I knew. He suspected what was inside. He just didn't know how much I'd found. "Claire," he said slowly, trying to regain control. "Whatever little tantrum you're planning." "It's not a tantrum, Dad," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "It's evidence." The word hung in the air like smoke. Uncle Rob set down his fork. Derek's smirk vanished completely. My father's face turned pale, then red. He grabbed the envelope roughly, tearing it open. His eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. His hands started shaking. "Where did you get this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Let's just say I've been paying attention." My father slammed the papers onto the table, but his confidence was gone. Derek grabbed them, eyes widening as he read. "This is private," Dad hissed at me, his voice trembling with rage. "You had no right." "I had every right," I said, standing up slowly. "Especially when you've been lying to everyone in this room for months." I turned to face Aunt Linda and Uncle Rob. "Did he tell you he was selling the family business? That Derek isn't taking over. He's just the name Dad's using to hide the sale." Aunt Linda's mouth fell open. Uncle Rob looked at my father in shock. "Richard, is that true?" My father's silence was the loudest answer. Derek tried to recover. "You're twisting everything," he said desperately. "Mom would have wanted." "Don't," I snapped, my voice breaking slightly. "Don't you dare use Mom's memory to justify this. My mother had died 3 years ago, and they'd been using her ghost as an excuse ever since." Dad finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my house." I smiled again, bitter but victorious. "Gladly. But you should know that's just a copy." I grabbed my coat and bag, the room spinning slightly as adrenaline surged through me. My father stood frozen, the papers crumpled in his fist. Derek looked like he wanted to chase after me, but he didn't move. Aunt Linda whispered something to Uncle Rob, but I couldn't hear it over the ringing in my ears. As I reached the door, my father's voice stopped me. "You'll regret this, Claire." I turned back, meeting his eyes. "The only thing I regret," I said quietly, "is believing you ever cared about me." Then I walked out into the cold December night, my breath fogging in the air. My hands shook as I unlocked my car, but not from fear, from relief. For years I'd been the good daughter. I'd worked weekends at the family hardware store, managed inventory, handled payroll when Dad claimed he was too busy. I'd sacrificed job offers in other cities to stay close, to help, to prove I was worthy. And this was how he repaid me: public humiliation and erasure. But what he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. Ever since I overheard him on the phone, laughing about cutting me out. I started my car, the engine humming to life. In my rearview mirror, I saw the warm glow of the house I'd grown up in. It didn't feel like home anymore. The night I overheard that phone call, everything changed. It was late June, and I'd stopped by the house to drop off some financial documents Dad had requested. I heard his voice from the study, low and casual, like he was talking to an old friend. "She has no idea," he said, chuckling. "Derek and I have it all planned. By Christmas, she'll be out, and we'll have full control." I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding. "Claire's always been too trusting," he continued. "She'll cry a little, maybe make a scene, but she won't fight back. She never does." That's when something inside me snapped. Not loudly, quietly, like a door closing. I didn't storm in. I didn't cry. I simply turned around, walked out, and started planning. The next morning, I opened a new email account and began digging. I requested access to business files under the pretense of learning more about operations. I scanned documents when Dad wasn't looking. I saved spreadsheets, recorded conversations, and took photos of handwritten notes left carelessly on his desk. Every late-night work session, every emergency task he gave me, it all became research. And the more I uncovered, the worse it got. The first major discovery came in August. I found bank statements showing that Dad had been transferring money from the business account into a personal fund, one only he and Derek had access to. These weren't small amounts. Over 18 months, nearly $200,000 had disappeared from the company my mother had helped build. Felt sick. My mother had poured her heart into that business, working alongside Dad when they were young and broke, designing the logo herself, choosing the store's name, Bennett and Family Hardware. Family. The word felt like a cruel joke now. I took copies of everything and stored them in a locked folder on a secure cloud account. Then I kept working, kept smiling, kept pretending I didn't know. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, watching them laugh at dinner, listening to Derek brag about future plans, hearing Dad talk about legacy while he actively destroyed it. In September, I found the sale agreement. Dad had been negotiating with a corporate chain for months. They were offering $3 million for the business, the property, and the Bennett name. The deal was set to close in January, and my name wasn't anywhere on the paperwork. I needed help, but I couldn't trust anyone in the family. So I reached out to Mom's old friend, Margaret Chen, a retired accountant who'd worked with my parents years ago. I met her at a quiet cafe outside town, my hands shaking as I spread the documents across the table. Margaret's expression darkened as she reviewed everything. "Claire," she said slowly, "this is financial fraud. Your mother's share of the business was supposed to transfer to you upon her death. It's in her original will." "What?" I whispered. I'd never seen my mother's will. Dad said it was too painful to discuss. Margaret pulled out her phone, scrolling through old emails. "Your mother updated her will 2 years before she passed. She wanted to make sure you were protected." She showed me a scanned signature page. My mother's handwriting was unmistakable. 50% ownership of Bennett and Family Hardware to Claire Marie Bennett. Tears blurred my vision. Why didn't I know? "Because," Margaret said grimly, "your father never filed it. He used an older version, one that left everything to him." She leaned forward. "Claire, you need a lawyer. Now." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I know." Finding the right lawyer took weeks. I needed someone sharp, discreet, and willing to go up against my father, who had connections all over town. Finally, through Margaret's recommendation, I met attorney Jessica Morales. She was younger than I expected, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I laid everything out. The hidden transfers, the sale agreement, my mother's unfiled will, the conversations I'd recorded. Jessica listened without interrupting, taking notes in swift, precise handwriting. When I finished, she sat back and exhaled slowly. "Your father's in serious trouble," she said. "If we can prove he deliberately suppressed your mother's will and mismanaged business funds, we're looking at fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, possibly more. What do I need to do?" "Yes. Keep gathering evidence," she said. "Don't confront him yet. We need everything airtight before we move." He paused. "And Claire, be prepared. This will get ugly." He nodded. "I know." Over the next few months, Jessica and I worked quietly. She filed preliminary motions, requested audits, and contacted the corporate buyer to flag potential legal issues with the sale. Every step was careful, calculated, legal. By December we were ready. The week before Christmas, I received a text from Derek. "Family dinner Sunday. Dad says it's important. Don't be late." I knew exactly what that meant. This was when they'd make their move. Cut me out publicly, humiliate me in front of everyone, ensure I looked like the ungrateful daughter who abandoned the family. I told Jessica. She smiled slightly. "Perfect timing," she said. "Let them think they've won. Then we hit them with everything." That Sunday I dressed carefully. Simple black dress, minimal makeup, calm demeanor. I printed a single packet of the most damning evidence and tucked it into an envelope. Just enough to shock them. Just enough to show I knew everything. As I drove to my father's house, Christmas lights twinkled along the street, cheerful and oblivious. I felt oddly peaceful. For 6 months, I'd lived in fear and secrecy, carrying the weight of their betrayal alone. But tonight it would all come out. Tonight the truth would finally speak. I parked in the driveway, took a deep breath and walked inside. The house smelled like turkey and lies. My father greeted me with a fake smile. Derek barely looked at me. And Aunt Linda hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm so glad you're here." Smiled back. "Me too." Dinner started normally. Small talk, forced laughter, the clinking of silverware. I played my part perfectly, asking about Derek's new car, complimenting Aunt Linda's dessert, nodding politely at my father's stories. But underneath the table, my hand rested on my bag, fingers brushing the envelope. Then came the announcement. My father stood, raised his glass, and delivered his rehearsed speech about cutting me off. I watched Derek try to hide his grin. I saw Aunt Linda's shock. I felt Uncle Rob's discomfort. And then I reached into my bag. The moment I placed that envelope on the table, the entire room shifted. My father's confident mask cracked. Derek's smugness turned to panic. Even Aunt Linda leaned forward, sensing something bigger than a simple family argument. When Dad opened the envelope and saw the bank statements, the transfer records, the sale agreement with his signature, his face drained of color. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "From your desk," I said calmly. "From your emails. From public records." I turned to the others. "Did you know Dad's been stealing from the business Mom built? That he's selling everything without telling anyone? That he never filed Mom's real will?" Silence. Uncle Rob stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "Richard, what is she talking about?" My father tried to recover, sputtering excuses, but the evidence was right there in black and white. Derek jumped in, voice desperate. "She's lying. She's always been jealous." "I have recordings," I said quietly, cutting him off. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a saved file. "Would you like to hear the one where you and Dad laugh about how stupid I am? Or the one where you plan exactly how to erase me?" Derek went pale. My father slammed his hand on the table. "You recorded us. That's illegal." "Actually," I said, meeting his eyes, "in this state, one-party consent is legal. I was part of those conversations. I had every right." I checked with Jessica extensively on this point. Aunt Linda looked horrified. "Richard, tell me this isn't true." My father's silence said everything. I stood up slowly, gathering my things. I've already filed a legal challenge to the will, I said. My attorney has contacted the buyers about the sale. And I've requested a full audit of the business finances. Derek shot to his feet. You can't do that. I already did, I said. Merry Christmas. The days after Christmas were chaos. My phone exploded with calls. Aunt Linda demanding explanations, Uncle Rob asking for copies of documents, Derek sending furious texts threatening to destroy me. My father went silent, which scared me more than his anger. Jessica assured me we were on solid legal ground. They're panicking, she said. That's good. It means they know they're caught. She filed additional motions, and within a week, we had a court date set for mid-January to review my mother's will and the business finances. The corporate buyer pulled out of the sale, citing unforeseen legal complications. That alone cost my father hundreds of thousands in lost profit. I felt a grim satisfaction but no joy. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. In early January, I received an unexpected visitor. Margaret Chen called, asking to meet urgently. When I arrived at her house, she looked shaken. Claire, I found something else, she said, handing me a folder. Your mother kept a safety deposit box. I helped her set it up years ago. I think you need to see what's inside. My heart raced. What is it? Letters, Margaret said softly. And a video. The safety deposit box was at a bank across town, listed under my mother's maiden name. Margaret had kept the key all these years, waiting for the right moment. We opened it together, and inside were 3 sealed envelopes addressed to me and a small USB drive. My hands trembled as I opened the first letter. My mother's handwriting filled the page. Elegant, familiar, heartbreaking. My dearest Claire, it began. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I fear your father has not honored my wishes. I want you to know the truth about our family, about the business, and about the choices I made to protect you. Tears streamed down my face as I read. She explained how she'd suspected my father was mismanaging money, how she'd updated her will secretly, how she'd made Margaret promise to give me these letters if anything happened. You are stronger than you know, she wrote. Don't let him take what's yours. Fight for yourself the way I wish I had. The second letter contained financial details, account numbers, investment records, proof of her contributions to the business. The third was more personal, memories of raising me, hopes for my future, apologies for not protecting me better. And then there was the video. We watched the video on Margaret's laptop. My mother appeared on screen, sitting in this very living room, her face tired but determined. The date stamp showed it was recorded 3 months before her death. Claire, she said, her voice steady despite obvious pain. I need you to hear this from me. Your father is not the man I thought I married. Over the years, he's become controlling, dishonest, and cruel, especially to you. She paused, wiping her eyes. I've tried to shield you, but I know once I'm gone, he'll try to erase you from everything we built together. She detailed specific instances of his manipulation, his financial deception, his favoritism toward Derek. I've made sure the business ownership transfers to you, she continued. 50% is legally yours. But your father will fight this. He'll lie, manipulate, and turn family against you. Don't let him. Her expression softened. You've always been my brave girl. The one who fixed things, who held us together. But you don't have to fix this. You just have to stand firm. She smiled through tears. I love you, sweetheart. Fight for yourself. You deserve everything. The video ended. I sobbed into Margaret's shoulder, grief and rage mixing together. My mother had known. She tried to protect me even from beyond the grave. Armed with the letters and video, Jessica immediately filed additional evidence with the court. The video was particularly damaging. My mother's clear, competent testimony about her wishes, recorded when she was undeniably of sound mind. There was no way my father could claim she didn't mean to leave me anything. The court date arrived faster than expected. January 14th. I dressed in a navy suit, my mother's pearl necklace around my neck for strength. Jessica met me outside the courthouse, her expression serious but confident. "They're going to try everything," she warned. "Stay calm. Let the evidence speak." Inside, the courtroom was cold and formal. My father sat with his lawyer, a sharp-suited man named Bennett who'd been the family attorney for years. Derek sat behind them, looking nervous. Aunt Linda and Uncle Rob sat on my side. They'd chosen me after seeing the evidence, and their support meant more than I could express. The judge, a stern woman named Hargrove, called the proceedings to order. "We're here to review the validity of the will of Elizabeth Marie Bennett and allegations of financial impropriety related to Bennett and Family Hardware." Brennan stood immediately. "Your Honor, this is a vindictive daughter attempting to overturn her mother's clearly stated wishes." "Save it, counsel," Judge Hargrove interrupted. "I've reviewed the preliminary evidence. Let's start with the will itself." Jessica presented my mother's original will first, the one my father had filed, dated 8 years ago, leaving everything to him. Then she presented the updated version, dated 2 years before Mom's death, clearly leaving me 50% ownership of the business. The signatures were identical, verified by a handwriting expert Jessica had hired. "The question," Jessica said calmly, "is why Mr. Bennett filed the older version when he had clear knowledge of the updated will." My client's mother left explicit instructions with her accountant, Margaret Chen, who will testify today. Margaret took the stand, her voice steady as she explained how my mother had asked her to witness the new will, how she'd expressed concerns about my father's financial management, how she'd made Margaret promise to protect me. "Elizabeth knew her husband would try to cut Claire out," Margaret testified. "She told me directly. He'll punish her for being like me, independent and honest." My father's lawyer tried to discredit Margaret, suggesting she was biased, but her documentation was flawless. Then came the bank statements. Jessica walked through every suspicious transfer, every unexplained withdrawal, the shell account my father and Derek controlled. "Over 18 months, Jessica stated, Richard Bennett diverted $247,000 from the business into personal accounts. This is embezzlement." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. My father's face turned red. Brennan tried to argue the transfers were legitimate business expenses, but Jessica had receipts showing otherwise. Personal purchases, cash withdrawals with no documentation, payments to Derek for consulting that never occurred. The evidence was overwhelming. Then came the video. Jessica requested permission to play my mother's recording. Judge Hargrove agreed. The courtroom went silent as my mother's face filled the screen. Her voice clear and strong as she explained her wishes, her fears, her love for me. When it ended, I saw Aunt Linda wiping tears. Uncle Rob stared at my father with disgust. Even Judge Hargrove's stern expression softened slightly. My father sat frozen, his hands clenched in his lap. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear. "Your Honor," Jessica said, "Elizabeth Bennett's wishes could not be clearer. She wanted her daughter to inherit 50% of the business she helped build. Richard Bennett deliberately suppressed this will and attempted to sell the business without his daughter's knowledge or consent, a business she is legally entitled to half of." Judge Hargrove turned to my father. "Mr. Bennett, do you have an explanation for why you filed the older will when you had knowledge of the updated version?" My father stood slowly. I thought the older one was more recent. It was an honest mistake." "An honest mistake," the judge repeated, her tone incredulous. "You accidentally filed a will 8 years old instead of one 2 years old? And then, accidentally, sold the business without informing your daughter of her legal ownership?" He had no answer. The judge called a recess. Jessica, Margaret, and I sat in a small waiting room while my father and Brennan argued in hushed, desperate voices down the hall. Derek paced outside, phone pressed to his ear, probably calling someone for help that wouldn't come. "It's going well," Jessica assured me. "Better than I expected." The video was the final nail. I nodded, but I felt numb. This wasn't victory, it was vindication, yes, but also grief. My mother had known how much my father would hurt me, and she'd tried to prevent it. I wished desperately that she were here, that I could thank her, tell her I understood now. Aunt Linda found me in the hallway. "Claire," she said gently, "I'm so sorry. I should have seen what he was doing. I should have protected you." "It's not your fault," I said, squeezing her hand. "He fooled all of us." When court reconvened, Judge Hargrove didn't waste time. After reviewing all evidence, including the testimony of Margaret Chen and the video recording of Elizabeth Bennett, this court finds that the updated will dated March 15th is the valid legal document reflecting Mrs. Bennett's true wishes. My father's face went white. Derek cursed under his breath. I felt Jessica's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Furthermore," the judge continued, her voice sharp, "the financial records clearly show misappropriation of business funds. I'm ordering a full forensic audit of Bennett and Family Hardware and freezing all business accounts pending investigation." My father shot to his feet. "Your Honor, that's excessive." "Sit down, Mr. Bennett," Judge Hargrove snapped. "You've lied to this court, defrauded your daughter, and violated your fiduciary duty as executor of your wife's estate. You're lucky I'm not holding you in contempt right now." He turned to me. "Ms. Bennett, you are hereby recognized as 50% owner of Bennett and Family Hardware, as your mother intended. Any sale or major business decision requires your consent moving forward." I exhaled shakily. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Additionally," the judge said, glaring at my father, "Mr. Bennett, you will repay the $247,000 misappropriated from the business within 90 days, or face criminal charges for embezzlement. Am I clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," my father muttered, defeated. "This hearing is adjourned." The gavel struck with finality. As people filed out, my father and Derek left quickly, avoiding eye contact. But before I could leave, Brennan approached me, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Bennett, I want to apologize. I didn't know the full extent of what your father had done. If I had, you would have helped him hide it better," I said coldly. He flinched. "I'm truly sorry." I walked past him without another word. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. Word had spread about the case. Jessica fielded questions while I stood beside her, squinting in the bright winter sun. "My client is relieved that justice has been served and her mother's wishes honored," Jessica said smoothly. "We have no further comment at this time." As we walked to the parking lot, I saw my father and Derek standing by their car. My father looked older suddenly, his shoulders slumped, his face gray. Derek looked furious, but there was fear in his eyes too. Fear of the consequences finally catching up. For a moment, our eyes met across the parking lot. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just emptiness. They'd tried to erase me, to steal what my mother had fought to protect, and they'd failed. But there was no joy in that failure, only sadness for what our family could have been. I turned away and got into Jessica's car. As we drove away, I watched the courthouse shrink in the rearview mirror. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "Now," Jessica said, "you rebuild. The business is half yours. You decide what to do with it, run it, sell your share, whatever you want. You're in control." Control. The word felt foreign but welcome. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn my father's approval or prove my worth. Just was. Over the following weeks, the forensic audit revealed even more financial misconduct. My father had been siphoning money for years, not just 18 months. The total came to over $400,000. The auditors recommended criminal prosecution, but I asked them to hold off. I wanted repayment first, just a second. Derek stopped speaking to me entirely, which was fine. He'd lost his meal ticket, his future, and his illusions about being the golden child. Last I heard, he'd moved 2 states away, working some entry-level job and blaming everyone but himself. My father reached out once, a short email. "Claire, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we talk?" I deleted it without responding. Some betrayals don't deserve reconciliation, only distance. With my half-ownership secured, I made a difficult decision. I didn't want to run Bennett and Family Hardware, It held too many painful memories. Instead, I negotiated a buyout with a local entrepreneur who'd always respected the business. She paid me fair market value, and I used part of the money to start a non-profit in my mother's name, supporting small businesses owned by women. The rest I invested carefully, following advice from Margaret and a financial planner. For the first time I had security, not because someone gave it to me but because I'd fought for it. One Saturday in March, I visited my mother's grave. The tulips I'd planted last fall were starting to bloom, bright yellow against the gray headstone. I knelt down, brushing away dead leaves, and spoke quietly. "I did it, Mom. I fought like you told me to." Tears slipped down my cheeks. "I wish you were here. I wish you could have seen Dad's face when the judge ruled. I wish." I stopped, swallowing hard. "I just wish you were here." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I felt her presence. Warm, proud, loving. I stayed there for an hour, telling her about everything that had happened, about the non-profit, about my plans for the future. As I stood to leave, I noticed someone had left fresh flowers on the grave. White roses, my mother's favorite. There was no card, but I knew they were from Margaret. She'd been keeping this promise for years, waiting to help me when I needed it most. I drove home slowly, the spring sun warming my face through the windshield. My phone buzzed with messages. Friends checking in, Margaret sending article links about non-profit management, Aunt Linda inviting me to dinner. Life was beginning to feel normal again, or at least a new kind of normal. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, staring at my house, a modest 2-bedroom I'd bought with part of the settlement. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was mine. Truly mine. That evening I hosted a small dinner party. Margaret came, along with Aunt Linda and Uncle Rob, Jessica, and a few close friends who'd supported me through everything. We ate homemade lasagna and laughed, the conversation easy and genuine. "To Claire," Margaret said, raising her glass. "For being braver than she knew." Everyone echoed the toast, and I felt my throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you," I managed. "All of you. I couldn't have done this alone." "You shouldn't have had to do it at all," Aunt Linda said fiercely. "But you handled it with more grace than anyone could expect." After dinner, as I cleared plates, Jessica pulled me aside. "I got a call today," she said. "Your father's lawyer wants to negotiate the repayment terms. He can't come up with the full amount by the deadline." I considered this. Part of me wanted to hold firm, force the criminal prosecution. But I thought about my mother's words. "Fight for yourself." Done that. Good one. Dragging this out wouldn't give me anything I didn't already have. "Tell them I'll accept monthly payments with interest," I said finally. "But if he misses even one, we pursue charges immediately." Jessica nodded approvingly. Smart. Merciful but firm. I wasn't sure it was mercy. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Or maybe it was closure, knowing I didn't need his punishment to feel whole. As spring turned to summer, I found myself healing in unexpected ways. The non-profit launched successfully, our first grant helping 3 women-owned businesses expand. I started dating again, cautiously, and reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during the years of trying to please my father. One evening I received a letter forwarded from my old address. The return address was unfamiliar. Inside was a short note from Derek. "Claire, I know you probably won't read this, and I don't blame you. I've spent months thinking about everything that happened. I was wrong, not just wrong but cruel. Dad convinced me you were the enemy, and I believed him because it was easier than admitting we were the problem. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. Hope you're happy. You deserve it. Derek." I read it twice, then tucked it into a drawer. Maybe one day I'd respond. Maybe I wouldn't. But it was something, a crack in the wall, an acknowledgement of truth. My father never apologized directly. He made his payments on time every month like clockwork. That was probably the closest he could come to admitting he'd been wrong. It wasn't enough, but it was reality. And I'd learned to accept reality without letting it define me. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after that terrible dinner, I stood in my kitchen baking cookies. My mother's recipe, the one she'd taught me as a child. The house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, and carols played softly on the radio. I thought about that moment when I'd reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope, the look on my father's face, the shift in the room. It had taken courage I didn't know I had. But more than that, it had taken clarity, the understanding that I deserved better, that my mother's love and sacrifice meant something, that truth mattered more than peace. My phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. "Merry Christmas Eve, sweetheart. Are you still coming tomorrow?" "Of course," I said, smiling. "I wouldn't miss it." "Good. Your uncle's already threatening to eat all the cookies before you arrive." I laughed, the sound genuine and light. After we hung up, I looked around my home, at the photos on the wall, the plants thriving by the window, the life I'd built from the rubble of betrayal. I thought about my mother's video, her words. "You deserve everything." She was right. And I'd claimed it. Not through bitterness or revenge, but through standing firm, telling the truth, and refusing to be erased. I raised a cookie to the ceiling, a small toast to her memory. "Merry Christmas, Mom. We did it." Outside, snow began to fall, soft and quiet. Inside, I felt warm, safe, and finally, after everything, free.